The air tasted like decay, stale earth, and an overwhelming, cloying pine resin. It was a crisp, punishingly cold evening in late October, the kind of weather that felt less like a change of season and more like the world holding its breath. The Blackwood National Forest, specifically the section cryptically referred to on old topographical maps as the Silent Zone, was already swallowing the last, bruised vestiges of daylight. The canopy here was dense, ancient, and unnaturally low, filtering the light into a sickly, perpetual yellow-green haze even when the sun was high. Now, at twilight, it was simply black. Liam, the 23-year-old anchor of the group, a psychology major who believed in data over dread, killed the engine of his battered SUV. The metallic click-click-click of the cooling manifold was, paradoxically, the loudest sound they had heard in 20 minutes. When that stopped, the resulting silence was not the gentle quiet of the country. It was heavy, insulating, and absolute. It felt less like the absence of noise and more like a vast, collective presence had simply commanded all other sound to cease. "We are officially off the grid," Liam announced, pulling the key from the ignition. He tried for a cavalier smile, looking at his reflection in the driver's side mirror. It was strained. He looked over at Maya, his girlfriend, whose anxiety was palpable enough to condense the air. Maya was shivering, despite her thick wool scarf and layered jacket. Her eyes, wide and dark, scanned the monolithic trunks that ringed the small gravel pull-off. She was the one who had researched Blackwood, the unsettling local lore, the cryptic posts about its woods, having a shape to them, the statistically impossible number of missing persons near this latitude. "I still think choosing the place that actively suppresses all life and communication was maybe too ambitious for a fun weekend," she murmured, her voice thin. In the back, Sam, the perpetually ironic and tech-obsessed one, pulled off his massive noise-canceling headphones. He wore a fleece vest over a novelty t-shirt and looked spectacularly unsuited for the wilderness. "Relax, Maya. It's called the Silent Zone because the ancient geology screws up radio waves and wind patterns kill the cell signal. It's not some Lovecraftian horror. We'll be fine. Chloe. Tell her." Chloe, already halfway out of the car and pulling her pack onto her back, was the only one who seemed genuinely prepared, yet also the most unsettled. She carried the topography map clipped to her chest and wore serious, mud-splattered hiking boots. Chloe had insisted on this trip, loving the wilderness with a profound, almost spiritual intensity. Yet, she seemed nervous. She didn't look up at the soaring trees. She looked down at the earth. "The trails are tough, but it's just forest, Maya," Chloe said, her voice sounding too even, too rehearsed. "It's late. We need to set up camp fast." "Liam, the clearing I marked. Quarter-mile in, near the creek bed." Liam grabbed the largest, heaviest cooler. "Lead the way, expert." The path dissolved immediately into a treacherous obstacle course of tangled roots, slick moss, and wet, protruding boulders. The sheer physical effort of carrying their gear momentarily distracted them from the growing unease. But it quickly returned, because what Maya noticed, and what chilled Liam to his rational core, was the total absence of wildlife. No buzzing insects, no distant bird calls, no rustling leaves from a foraging deer. The only sounds were the heavy thump-thump of their gear, the crunch of their own footsteps, and their increasingly labored breathing. The forest felt unnervingly sterile, as if every organism capable of making a sound had been forcibly evicted from this small, specific patch of land. 20 minutes into the gloom-shrouded walk, Chloe suddenly stopped. They had been following a nearly invisible deer trail, and now they were in a sudden, open space. "Here it is," she whispered, dropping her pack. The clearing was unnaturally perfect. A large, exact circle about 50 feet across, framed by towering, straight-trunked pines whose bark was wet and black. It looked less like a natural glade and more like a space intentionally cleared long ago. At the center lay a partially sunken ring of stones, an old fire pit. As they began the routine motions of setting up the two tents, a large dome for Liam and Maya, and a smaller, lone tent for Chloe, the feeling of being watched solidified from an anxiety into a certainty. Liam, the rationalist, felt a surge of irrational anger, convinced he was allowing suggestion to win. He would whirl around, ready to see a deer or a hiker, but there was only the motionless, towering wall of trees. Sam provided the first verifiable oddity. He was trying to string up a small solar charger on a low branch when he swore loudly. Seriously. Not even an edge signal. This is ridiculous. He frowned at his phone. Wait. That's genuinely strange. Battery dropped from 85 to 38 in the time it took us to walk in here. And the phone feels cold. Like freezer cold. Condensation. Sam. Cold air. Stop obsessing, Liam muttered, driving a tent stake with unnecessary force. But soon after, as the brief, hazy twilight surrendered to a suffocating blackness, Maya provided the second. She was organizing the cooking gear by the small, smoky fire Liam had managed to coax from the damp wood. Liam, where's my blue utility knife? She asked, her voice quiet but strained. I don't know. Didn't you have it in your backpack pocket? I did. I took it out when I opened the food bag 10 minutes ago, right here, and laid it on the cooking mat. It's gone. She paused, chewing her lip. And the large orange water bottle. I packed it. I saw it when we pulled the tents out. It's not here. Did you mess with my bag? No, I haven't touched your pack since we left the car. It's dark. Maya, you misplaced it. A lost water bottle and a misplaced knife. Simple, mundane losses. But combined with the unnerving silence, Sam's bizarre battery drain, and the overwhelming certainty of intrusion, the atmosphere curdled. They sat huddled close to the small, defiant fire, the flames doing little to warm the vast, encroaching darkness. The firelight cast dancing shadows that were too long, too fast, and occasionally, they seemed to flicker behind the nearest trunks. Okay, Sam said, pulling out the bag of marshmallows, trying to lighten the mood. Who wants to hear the local legend of the Crooked Man of Blackwood, the woodsman who hunts by mimicking voices? No one answered. The silence was too profound. The fire snapped once, loudly, and Sam stuffed the marshmallows back into the cooler. The weight of the forest pressed down, suffocating. Night 1. The sound and the echo. It was well past midnight. Liam lay awake, holding Maya in his arms, his mind racing through psychological literature to explain the collective anxiety. Infrasound. Seismic activity. Low-frequency hum from the geology. Anything but the alternative. The fire had died down to a pulsing, low cluster of embers. The cold seeped into the tent floor. Then, they heard it. It wasn't a familiar noise. It was a dry, continuous, grating sound, like thick, coarse nails being dragged across a massive slab of slate, or stone grinding slowly against raw bone. It came from the west, deep in the thickest part of the forest, and it was loud. Too loud for anything smaller than a large, heavy machine, yet too organic to be man-made. The scraping didn't stop. It began to move, circling the clearing with a slow, deliberate, almost mechanical pace. The sound was utterly without rhythm, yet relentlessly uniform, designed, it seemed, only to irritate and unnerve. Liam slowly, carefully, sat up. He grabbed the heavy metal poker he had placed next to the tent zipper. What the hell is that? He whispered. Chloe's voice cut through the tent wall, sharp and strained. It's been going for 10 minutes. It started when the fire died. The sound continued its slow arc around the perimeter, growing closer, more immediate, until it was directly behind Sam's lean-to. Liam forced himself to act. He grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight. I'm going to check. It's probably a loose rock shifting on the ground or a tree rubbing on another one. There is no wind, Liam, Maya reminded him, her voice trembling. He ignored her, unzipping the tent with excruciating slowness. He stepped out into the frigid night air. The cold hit him like a punch. The scraping sound was deafening now, vibrating in his chest. He clicked on the flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating a black wall of wet trunks and tangled underbrush. He swung the beam, methodical and slow, searching for the source. When the light hit the area directly behind Sam's lean-to, the scraping stopped. Instantly. The cessation of the noise was as shocking as the noise itself, leaving a painful ringing vacuum in its wake. Liam froze. He stood utterly still for a full minute, listening for breath, for movement, for a snap of a twig. Nothing. The stillness was complete. He swung the light back and forth, holding it steady on each trunk, searching for any reflection of eyes, any bulk of muscle or fur. He felt vulnerable, his back to the other tents. See anything? Sam called out, his voice high-pitched and strained. No, nothing, Liam called back, forcing a note of false certainty into his voice. He turned to go back. As his foot lifted to take the first step, he heard a new sound, far softer, but infinitely more penetrating. It was the sound of utter distress, a single, sharp whimper, followed by two soft, desperate sobs. The sound came from the direction of the fire pit, right where Maya and Chloe had been sitting earlier. Liam dropped the poker and bolted. He burst back into the clearing, the dying embers blinding him momentarily. Maya was still standing by the tent, her face contorted in alarm, but not from the sound he heard. Chloe was standing rigidly next to her tent, looking not at him, but toward the fire pit. What happened? Who cried? Liam demanded, panting, clutching Maya. Maya looked genuinely confused. Cried. No one cried. Sam was just trying to turn on his radio again, and it made a loud popping noise. I thought that was what you were running from. Sam held up his small transistor radio. Yeah, it just died. Completely. Batteries are fine, but the guts are fried. Liam stared at them, the terror hardening into a cold knot in his stomach. You didn't hear it. A whimper. A sob. It sounded like a woman. Chloe finally spoke, her eyes wide and fixed on the darkness beyond the tents. I heard the radio pop. But I heard something else a moment ago. When you were out there, searching. What? She hesitated, her breathing shallow. It was a whisper. Right behind me. It said my name. Chloe. My girl. Liam stared at her. Chloe's father had died 3 years ago, a loss that had changed her forever. It sounded exactly like him, Chloe finished, her chin trembling violently. The way his voice used to break when he was tired. Liam wanted to rationalize, to scream about confirmation bias and auditory hallucinations brought on by stress. But the scraping, the sudden silence, the sound of Sam's humming right outside his tent earlier, and now this devastating whisper, it was too much to dismiss. The humming. It started again, soft and insidious, from the direction of Sam's lean-to. It was that specific, off-key cartoon-themed song Sam used to sing when he was nervous. Sam, for God's sake, stop it. Liam hissed. The humming stopped. Then, Sam's voice, clear and slightly muffled through the nylon of his lean-to, replied, I'm not singing, man. I'm already asleep. And I'm definitely not near your tent. Liam and Maya looked at each other, the same ghastly realization dawning in both their faces. That humming. It was perfect. It was Sam. But Sam was asleep. They zipped the tent back up, not for safety, but for the illusion of it. They lay there, utterly still, listening to the impossible silence, knowing that something was right outside their canvas walls, listening back, learning, and already beginning to imitate them with terrifying accuracy. Day 2. The unfolding trap and the first loss. They woke to a meager, watery sunlight. The air in the clearing still felt cold, thick, and profoundly wrong. The dread was no longer an emotion, it was a physical weight. Liam found Sam sitting hunched over the dead radio, running his thumb over the shattered plastic casing. "You heard it," Liam stated, ignoring the events of the previous evening. Sam looked up, his eyes bloodshot, ringed with dark circles. "Heard what?" "The wind picking up." He squinted up at the motionless canopy. "No, wait, there's no wind. Look, man, my phone's dead, the radio's dead. This whole place is a black hole for anything electrical." Chloe emerged, pale but resolute. "We're wasting time. We need to hike to the river. It's the only identifiable landmark on the map other than this clearing. If we can get a signal or at least find a landmark, we might be able to find a trail out." They quickly packed 3 canteens, Chloe's map, and 2 flashlights. They left the 2 tents standing, a silent, desperate pretense that they planned to return, a plea to the Mimic to leave their shelter alone. Chloe led the way, meticulously checking her map against the few features: a distinctive triple-pronged oak, a large, striated boulder covered in yellow moss. They walked hard for a full hour. The woods felt thicker, the underbrush more tangled than the previous day. Chloe was navigating with the precision of a trained guide, yet she suddenly stopped, staring down at the map, then back at their surroundings. "This is impossible," she muttered, tracing a line on the paper with a dirt-smudged finger. "We should be at least a mile north by now. We've been walking for an hour, but we keep crossing back over the same 2 landmarks. There's the triple oak. There's the boulder. Are you sure your compass isn't acting up?" Liam asked, trying to sound helpful, not accusatory. "The compass is analog, Liam. It's fine," she snapped, her confidence dissolving. "Look, I marked that broken branch on the trail earlier with a strip of orange tape. It's right here again. We've been looping back on ourselves for 45 minutes. The realization hit them like a physical blow. They were caught in a local, geographical snare. The woods were not just silent. They were actively confusing their perception of space, guiding them, with silent precision, back to the center of their fear. They turned back. The walk felt alarmingly quick this time, unnatural, almost hurried by an unseen hand. In less than 20 minutes, they were back in the familiar, suffocating stillness of the clearing. The tent stood, untouched, mocking them. "We're trapped," Maya whispered. "The woods won't let us leave." Desperate for a sense of normalcy, Sam decided to check the creek bed again. "I'm dying of thirst. If there's even a drop, I'm getting it. I'll be quick. It's right behind Chloe's tent, right?" "Don't go alone," Maya pleaded, grabbing his sleeve. "It's 50 feet away, Maya. Relax." Sam laughed, a brittle, nervous sound, and grabbed a plastic canteen. He walked past Chloe's tent and into the dark undergrowth. 30 seconds later, they heard him. It wasn't a call for help, a shout, or a plea. It was a sound far, far worse. It was a burst of pure, unadulterated, joyful Sam laughter. It was the sound he made when he'd pulled off a great prank, or when he found a hidden, ridiculous detail in a game. Bright, booming, and genuinely happy. He sounded like a kid who had just found a $100 bill in his pocket. Liam, Maya, and Chloe looked at each other, stunned. Why would he laugh? The situation was horrific. The laugh ended abruptly, cut off not by a gasp or a scream, but by a sickening, wet gurgle, followed by a thick, heavy, final silence. Liam bolted, driven by a primal, protective instinct. He crashed through the ferns and low branches Sam had just passed. The dry creek bed was 20 feet away. There was no water. And no Sam. Liam stopped at the edge of the rocky ditch. The ground was loose soil and pine needles. There were no tracks, no sign of a struggle, nothing to indicate a man had just been standing there. The earth was undisturbed, except for one thing. Sam's canteen, empty, half buried in the soil. And next to it, lying on a patch of slick, black moss, was his phone. The screen was shattered, spider-webbed with cracks, but Liam could see the display. 0% battery. It looked like it had been violently smashed. Liam picked up the phone. It was unnervingly cold. As he held it, he felt a faint, rhythmic thump 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 vibrating from inside the dead casing, like a tiny, trapped heart. He backed away, slowly, his eyes darting through the trees. Sam! He roared, a desperate, animal sound. Sam, if this is a joke, it's not funny. No reply. Just the massive, expectant silence of the Blackwood Forest. When he returned to the clearing, Maya and Chloe were standing by the fire pit, arms around each other. He's gone, Liam said, holding up the phone. He just vanished. But he laughed first. That pure, joyful laugh. It's not an animal, Liam. It's not a man, Chloe said, her voice hollow. It's a mimic. It's using our sounds, our memories, and our feelings to draw us out. It needed Sam's pure joy, Maya whispered, horrified. It needed to record the sound of his uninhibited pleasure before it took him to use later. Liam felt the trap tighten. The entity was not just a threat to their bodies. It was a threat to their minds, using their love and their memories as lethal bait. Night 2. The siege. They tried to leave again in the afternoon. They chose a completely new direction, walking side by side, holding hands, convinced that if they did not stop and did not speak, the mimic's geographical confusion would fail. They walked for 2 hours, maintaining a grueling, desperate pace. And then they found it. A familiar, neatly arranged circle of stones, a partially sunken fire pit, and the 2 standing tents. They were back in the clearing. They knew then that they had been returned not because they were lost, but because they were allowed to be returned. The mimic had them right where it wanted them. The second night was a siege. Liam, Maya, and Chloe sat in a tight triangle next to the fire, which they built high, an angry, blazing monument to their defiance. They communicated only in strained, necessary whispers. They didn't dare use their names. It started exactly when the sun disappeared. It wasn't the scraping noise. This time, it was a precise, targeted attack on Chloe, designed to isolate her immediately. The sound came from the dense trees near her tent. The low, mournful cough of her father, a sound so familiar it was a memory in itself, followed by a faint, dragging noise like a wounded man pulling himself through the undergrowth. Chloe, it's so cold out here, honey. Help your old man. Just come give me your scarf, Chloe. It hurts so bad. The voice was heartbreakingly real, laced with the exact, familiar pain that Chloe remembered from his last months. Chloe clamped her hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face. She began to rock violently. It's not him, Liam. It's not him. She cried, a broken litany of denial. It's a lie, Chloe. It's a trick, Liam yelled, trying to fight the sound with his voice. But the mimic only turned up the volume, weaving in its new, devastating sound. Sam's booming, joyful laugh, which now echoed in the background, a chilling sound of ultimate, mocking glee. Chloe couldn't take it. She lunged for her tent, pulled the zipper down with a shriek of nylon, and plunged inside. I can't listen. I can't. The zipper went up, sealing her in an isolated canvas prison. Liam stared at the tent, then at Maya. They were alone. The mimic, sensing its victory, intensified the psychological warfare. It began to focus on Maya, who had buried her face in Liam's chest. From above them, seemingly floating down from the black canopy, came a new sound. A woman's voice, singing softly, perfectly in key, the lullaby Maya's mother used to sing to her. It was gentle, protective, and devastatingly real. Don't listen, Maya. It's not your mother. She's hundreds of miles away. But the voice continued, soft and beautiful, weaving around them like a seductive rope. Then, the final, visceral sound. Liam, look at the tent, Maya whispered, her voice a thread. Liam turned his head. The light from the fire was casting silhouettes on Chloe's domed tent. As he watched, a shadow stretched and contorted. It wasn't the shadow of a tree or a branch. It was the silhouette of a figure, unnaturally tall and slender, standing perfectly still outside the tent. The figure had long, clawed fingers, which, as Liam stared, slowly began to tap the canvas. And accompanying the tapping, there was a wet, sticky sound, like something huge and heavy slowly, painstakingly slithering up the side of the nylon. Liam knew, with absolute, cold certainty, that if he shone his flashlight, the thing wouldn't be there, but the sound was real. The sound was the threat. The sound was the physical manifestation. He grabbed Maya's shoulder, pulling her away from the hypnotizing fire. Close your eyes. Don't look. Don't listen. Focus on my voice only. We're leaving. Now. He pulled the car keys from his pocket, his hands slick with sweat. Go to Chloe's tent, he commanded, keeping his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. Tell her we're running to the car. Do not stop for anything. Maya nodded, scrambled to Chloe's tent, and yanked the zipper down. Chloe, we're going. Get out. Silence. Maya pulled the flap back. The sleeping bag was rumpled. Chloe's clothes were folded neatly by the entrance. Her shoes were there. The tent was empty. Liam. Maya screamed, the sound raw, tearing the silence. She's gone. She's not here. It got her while we were watching. The final lie and the escape. The scream shattered the manufactured calm. The mimic reacted instantly, abandoning the lullaby and the father's plea, going straight for the highest leverage sound. From the woods, the voice of Chloe echoed, frantic and piercing. Liam. Maya. Help me. It's got my legs. It hurts. Liam. I'm right here, near the big, flat rock. Hurry. You have to save me. The plea was perfect, desperate, and urgent. Maya took one step toward the voice. No. Liam roared, grabbing her arm and spinning her around. It's not her. It's a lie. It's the final trick. It knows you need to be the hero. We run, Maya. Now. We do not stop for any sound. He pulled her into the undergrowth, crashing toward the memory of the SUV's location. The mimic pursued them not with speed, but with a torrent of agonizing sound. The forest around them turned into a terrifying, personalized gauntlet. Sam's voice, now mocking and hysterical. Liam, you're an idiot. You're running the wrong way. I'm right here. Don't leave me to die. Chloe's voice, desperately pleading. Liam, I can't breathe. I'm still alive. You promised me you wouldn't leave me. Please, I'm dying. Maya's mother's lullaby, now distorted, wavering, sickly slow, coming from the shadows right beside their heads, a sound of profound, malevolent grief. Liam focused purely on the feel of the ground, the sound of Maya's desperate gasps, and the memory of the car's position. He refused to look left or right. He treated the sounds as wind, as irrelevant background static. They ran, blindly, for what felt like an hour but could only have been a few minutes. Liam knew the car was just 50 feet ahead when the Mimic delivered its ultimate, crippling blow. They heard the distinct, unmistakable jingle of a set of car keys, followed by the familiar, high-pitched chirp of a remote car lock unlocking, coming from directly behind a low-hanging cedar tree 30 feet in front of them, the very direction of the SUV. Liam skidded to a stop, his heart hammering against his ribs. If the keys were there, he had dropped them earlier. If he had dropped them, they were stuck. He patted his pocket. The keys were there. Safe. The sound repeated, louder this time. The clear, metallic jingle of the keys, and the cheerful chirp of the lock. This was the final lie, the lie of absolute truth. The sound was so accurate, so perfectly positioned to halt their flight and make them retrieve their only path to freedom. Every cell in their bodies screamed at them to turn back, to look for the keys, to ensure their escape. Liam looked at Maya, his face illuminated by the trembling beam of his flashlight. He could see his own frantic disbelief reflected in her eyes. "It's a trick," he gasped, the words tasting like ash. "It knows we can't stop. It's making the sound exactly where we need to go to save us. If we stop, if we look, we're acknowledging its existence. We run straight through the sound." He forced himself to turn his back on the sound of the keys. He grabbed Maya's hand and ran the final 10 steps. They burst out of the woods and onto the gravel patch. The SUV stood there, a solid, tangible piece of metal and glass. Liam fumbled the correct key from the mass in his pocket, jammed it into the driver's door, and threw both doors open. He shoved Maya inside, vaulted into the driver's seat, and slammed the door shut. He twisted the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, a magnificent, loud, mechanical sound that tore through the silence of the Blackwood. He slammed the transmission into reverse and floored the accelerator, not looking in the mirror, driving backward for 50 yards before spinning the wheel and speeding down the logging road, tires spitting gravel. They were going 50 miles an hour by the time they hit the pavement. They drove for 20 minutes in absolute, gasping silence. They were miles from the Blackwood boundary when the terror finally subsided enough for Maya to speak. "Liam, they're gone," she whispered. "It was waiting for us to leave. It learned us. It used us against each other." Liam didn't answer, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the empty road. He reached out and tentatively turned the car radio dial, desperate for the sound of normal human chatter, a connection to civilization. The radio static crackled violently, then cleared with a sharp hiss. A single voice, perfectly tuned, loud and chillingly clear, filled the car's speakers. It was Sam's voice. But this time, it wasn't pleading or laughing. It wasn't even mocking. Sam was speaking in a perfectly calm, professorial tone, reciting the complex definition of a psychological theory Liam had been struggling with for weeks. And that, Liam, is the difference between Pavlovian and instrumental conditioning. You should know that. Psychology major. You missed the key point about consequence. I didn't miss it. Then, the voice ended. The static did not return. The Mimic's final broadcast was replaced by the deep, resonant, and utterly empty silence of the Blackwood, now seemingly unbound from the forest, and echoing perfectly through their speakers. It knew they were listening. And it knew they hadn't stopped it from learning every single secret they possessed. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment and turn on notifications if you enjoyed the video so you never miss an upload.